So after a couple of months we meet again, and
Couple of years.
yes, right. It was like a year and something ago, right?
So we did a podcast. We did two podcasts that were online. Obviously, we had a hard time meeting up, figuring out the schedule and things like that. But I don't think we've seen each other for 2 years. I think the last time was in Schaumburg, Chicago. And yeah, that was.
A year or something ago, yeah.
I know I've been here for 2 years, but you left, I think, before that. So that has to be. When did you leave? 2019.
19.
So I don't think we've seen each other since then. So it's 3 years.
Yeah.
It's 3 years.
In person, no.
Yeah, in person.
How's love treating you here in Serbia these days?
Good. I mean, it's different, but good. It's what I expected.
How different?
Different. I think the main thing is the tempo, and what dictates the tempo is what makes life different. Obviously, big difference for me. That could be different over there too, but obviously I'm not over there. I'm here. Cheers. Is for example, I work from home, so obviously I'm avoiding the drive to work. But when you compare, for example, the US and Serbia, if you even have to take a car to work, and if I exclude Belgrade, we're talking like, 10-15 minute drive, if that. And whereas in the US, we're talking 45 minutes, hour and a half, maybe someone 2 hours. And it's a lot of lost, unproductive time. And unproductive, whether that's social life, whether that's work, whether that's hobbies, you lose a lot of time there. And also it's not like when you're, as well, that when you're traveling in the US, it's a highway, and the most diversity you're gonna see most likely is billboards, right? And it's the same billboards for 2 months, 3 months, you get excited when you see a new billboard. Whereas here, you walk to work, you see someone, especially smaller town like where I live, it's about 90,000 people. And, you say hi, you're going home, and you've got an hour before, you're gonna eat lunch, dinner, whatever, and you meet up with someone, you sit down for coffee, and coffee, in Serbia and coffee in the US are two different things. Coffee in the US is 15 minutes in Starbucks, let's grab, chit chat for a second, and we're on our way. We're here. I was actually watching, I don't know if he's a blogger or what the guy is, but he was in Serbia or Croatia. He's traveling all over, and he's like, man, coffee has a different concept. He's like, people will call me for coffee. I left for coffee at 6 and I came home at midnight. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be that, but you unexpectedly socialize with people. You interact with people more because you're with people. And I mean, if you probably live in downtown Chicago, or you live in New York City, or you live in LA, you're gonna get to experience that. But you and I both know the expenses and what it takes to live in a city, what I mean? Which is a little bit different. Every Serbian city, you can walk somewhere, you're gonna see people, and you don't, obviously, whenever you're living in a city, it's a little bit more expensive than any suburb, but it's not unreachable, it's not unattainable. So you get that social aspect, and with that also comes time to be more productive. Like, you're gonna work 8 hours over there, you're gonna work 9-10 hours. You're gonna do the same thing over here, but you're gonna gain an hour before, you're gonna gain an hour after, because you're not taking so long to commute. And generally speaking, like, I wanna go to the gym, I take my bike to the gym, and I'm inside the gym within 6-7 minutes. And that's one of the farther gyms. Mm-hmm. And in the US, you come home, you're gonna change, you gotta go to the gym, it's 15 minutes or 20 minutes to get to the gym, that's 20 minutes back, so you lose a lot of time in that commute. And I mean, I don't wanna sound like, hey, the only thing is, you get more of a social life, right? It's what you make of it. It's, are you gonna go home and open up a side business, or you're gonna go home, read a book, but I feel like you get a lot more of that and get a lot more interaction with people. And some people are introverts, they don't like that, and that's okay, you know? But to me, that I like being surrounded by people. I having my peace, but I come home with my peace. When I leave, I want something going on around, you know, I want everything buzzing, you know?
So what's going on when you're not working? How's your social life here in Serbia?
Good. I mean, so I'm engaged now and spend obviously a lot of time with my fiance, but like I said, the difference is I can be home and a friend calls me up and says, hey, do you want to meet up? We've met up. If I'm free, he's free. We've met up in 10 minutes. Obviously, being in the city, I can grab a bike. I can finish up what I need to finish up. There are plays to watch. There are obviously movie theater. Some simple things that you can go and see, watch, gym. But there's also a lot of nature, so you can go hiking. You can go rivers, lakes, and the other thing is cities here are a lot closer. You know, when you think of you're going to work, you're going from a suburb to the city, like you're going from Oak Brook to Chicago for work, you're probably looking at an hour and a half drive in rush hour. Whereas, I decide today, my fiance and I are gonna go see a play in Shabac, whole different city, get a little bit of a different aspect. It's about 45 minutes to an hour drive. Same thing with Belgrade. You're looking at hour and 15 now with the highway. They have the last section to complete. It'll be around an hour. So that's where I think the social life kind of has a different aspect to it. People have a little bit more free time, and you have a little bit more diversity. In the U.S., I think a lot of people don't get out of the U.S. because it's such a big country and there's a lot of things to see. But here, like, for one weekend, you're gonna go to Bosnia, you're gonna go to Montenegro, you're gonna go to Greece. Santorini was an hour and 50-minute flight. Rome is like an hour and a half flight. And there's a lot of advantages to living, I think, anywhere in Europe. I don't want to say anywhere because I haven't lived in other European countries, but I think that's one thing that brightens up the social life.
How's your business life? Do you have any, let's say, good experiences, or you have administration problems or corruption problems, or do you feel the system is not tied up as American, or you get along?
From what aspect? Like with working with people here, or you mean generally, like with
general,
the scope of what I do?
They say it like this: like in US, you obviously don't have corruption like in Serbia, but the good thing in Serbia that corruption is available to all of us. For example, if you go to the US and make a traffic violation, you cannot give to the police anything, or make a deal, or hey, I know somebody, don't give me a ticket. That's a no in US, but that's a yes in Serbia. So it's available for everybody, but in US it's available just for the higher society. So do you feel the corruption? Do you feel the vibe? This you can like get by?
I mean, if we're talking business, I haven't. For example, I still work for the U.S. with the U.S. However we want to define it. I haven't seen that, and I mean, here I haven't had a chance to work with people. Like I've had the opportunity where I know a few younger guys who are going through college, so I'll help them out, or maybe they'll get a job, so I'll help them out. But that's, I mean, there's no corruption there to be had, you know what I mean? I've helped out, my godfather owns a company that they make different metal parts, they make machines for pellet outlets for heating. And so I've helped them out. They're a private company. So again, I haven't had the opportunity as far as like police officers. Yeah, that I think happens a lot more here, but I think they're kind of limiting it with, you know, with recording. It's recorded here more and more. It comes down to the person too. In the U.S., obviously there isn't that. But have I had direct experience with corruption? No, definitely not on a bigger scale. Even on a smaller scale, like the one thing that's really annoying here is that police have the right to pull you over for no reason. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the US, they pull you over only if you're if you violated a law or you're suspected of a certain crime, right? So here it's like, you know, they have routine traffic stops, which, okay, sometimes it's for checking alcohol levels, and okay, I get it, there's a lot of drunk driving, and I support that. I don't support drunk driving. But, you know, you're in a hurry somewhere, you're abiding by the law, and they pull you over, and they just want to check your driver's license. And it's just like, you know, it should be based off some suspicion. But that's the one thing that, and again, that's not corruption, that's just the way the system is built. They're allowed to pull you over for no reason. So that's, I don't know, one thing that's kind of annoying, but again, I haven't had any bad experiences where they're like, oh, give us some money or something like that. It's been pretty clear cut.
Do you feel that you have the same level of freedom here like in US? In general, like the freedom of speech, freedom to go everywhere, freedom to do whatever you want. Is there any difference?
Yeah, I think I do. There is, I think, an administrative aspect that here kind of feels, it is a lot more restricted. So when we're talking about, for example, you want to register your car. And in the US, you know, you go down to your DMV, Secretary of State, and you pay the fee, and whether it's you that pays it, or your daughter, or your father, it really doesn't matter. You go with the paycheck, whatever it is, you pay it, and you're done, and it's done. Here, and you know, you have your emissions testing, but literally anyone can take the car for emissions testing. Here, there's a technical inspection, you know that too. And the technical inspection, they'll find something really small, and you know, you got to take care of that, and then after that you need to go register your car. So you need to go get either the place where you do technical inspection, they'll provide the paperwork, or you have to go to the police station to get your paperwork. And only the person who is, for example, who the car is registered under, or who has been given permission to drive your car, consent, or I'm lacking the official word for it. But the authority, right? So if the legal authority to drive your car, you are the only people that can go register your car. And it's such a nuisance for something that's like, I'm just registering my car.
There's no reason for that. Yeah.
But, you know, who knows what kind of problems there would be if someone, and I think it's mostly done because when you sell your vehicle, they don't need to transfer it to their name right away, right? So I think they're trying to avoid any kind of problems, but again, it's such a drag for some things like that. Like another thing, I've shopped at IKEA a million times in the US, right? You want to return something, you say, I'm returning this, they don't really even ask why you're returning it. It's like, okay, it's within the 90 days, whatever it is, 90 days, 6 months. And here I bought a set of coffee cups, the little espresso cups. So you're supposed to get 4 of them, you're supposed to get 4 of the little plates. And so the only IKEA in Serbia is 1 hour and 45 minutes away. So I come home, I open up like the little coffee cup set, and I'm missing a plate. And so I call them up and I tell them, hey, I purchased this, and what can we do about it? can I send this to you? Can you send me a new one, or can you just send me the single plate? Like, that's literally all that I need. They're like, no problem, we can exchange it, but because you didn't purchase it online, you purchased it in the store, you need to come back here and exchange it. And so, I mean, we're talking about a set that was maybe like $10, you know, here in Nara, and that's it. So luckily enough, I was headed within the 90-day return period that I was headed back to Belgrade, and I was like, all right, we'll make a stop at IKEA. And we get there and you go to the, what do they call, customer service. And so I'm expecting like, okay, they'll just swap it, give me another one, or they'll pull a plate out of another one. I had to hand it over. Then there was one piece of paper that I had to sign, and they had to put a stamp on it. Then there was another piece of paper that I had to sign, and to put a stamp on it. Then they had to issue me, there was a receipt, again, like a return receipt that I had to sign. And then they couldn't even give me money or exchange it. They gave me essentially a gift card to go around and pick it up again. And it's just like those things in the US, they're very easy. And obviously in the US, you look at a store like Nordstrom or Walmart, it's like no questions asked policy. I stood behind in line, customer service at Walmart when a woman returned a shampoo. And the clerk asked her, she says, did you use this? She said, yeah, but I didn't like it. And I mean, that's not a problem. It's like here, I was literally missing a plate, and I had to drive an hour and 45 minutes, you know, one way, and sign a bunch of documents and get it stamped so I can get one little plate. And so it's like things here like that, I don't know, how do we get on this topic? Things like that feel like you're kind of having your, you know, freedom limited. From the aspect, am I gonna travel and I think that's pretty much standard. Same as in the US.
I don't think we value our time as much as in US, you know, like they don't give a shit if you have to travel 2 hours and lose the whole day for it.
Yeah.
They just don't care. So the whole system is like that. Yeah. But we're getting there, I think. We will. We'll have to.
There's progress. There's progress, definitely.
Yeah. What else do you do in your free time? Do you do anything as your hobbies or some shit like that?
So I like photography. We were talking about this earlier before we started filming, and I hesitate to talk a lot about it, so I don't have some people who really work on that, you know, as a profession. I
don't know anything about it, so you can say it to me. Like,
well, it's okay. I'm hoping someone, you know, have your audience watching, and someone knows hopefully more than me. But no, I definitely enjoy it. I wish I had a little bit more time. With a full frame camera, it's not like, you know, you stick it in your pocket, you gotta carry it, whether it's a whole bag. So a lot of times it's when I travel, and even if it's, you know, a weekend trip, I try to bring it with me, something interesting to see, take a few shots, maybe make a few videos, come back, go through Lightroom and things like that. So definitely a hobby. I've always, and we talked about this before, I was in Serbian theater in Chicago. Did 7 plays in 2.5 years, and the last 3 plays were the main role. And ever since then, I haven't done any plays, so it's been 2 years. But working on some things by myself like this, quick short monologue. Probably.
What are you working on right now?
So it's there's Serbian people are obviously familiar with it. Sabirni Centar, and it's famous movie. And for those who don't know, it's a movie where it's basically an archaeologist dies, and he goes to heaven, and he meets all his dead relatives, friends, and so forth, and simultaneously there's life going on Earth. And so when he enters there, when he enters heaven, or it's more like a philosophical, I think, interpretation of heaven. It's not typically what we envision heaven to be. And so, I mean, for those who were Christians, who believe in Christianity, but generally speaking, it's not what anyone, I think, typically imagines the afterlife. And so there is a scene where when that archaeologist comes in, he's asking, "What do you guys do here?" And so he starts. They start. It's mostly one actor, Dragan Nikolic, who talks about what they're doing, but during his speech, you have a few others kind of flying in, adding on to what he's talking about, and it's kind of like what they're doing there, but again, it returns the focus back to they're always thinking about those who are still alive and how they're processing what's going on. So it's honestly it's just a few minutes, but when I say I'm working on it, I'm really trying to get it right with the way I'm recording it, with the way I act it out and things like that. And obviously it's a hobby, so it's not like I'm sitting here, 8, 9, 10 hours a day recording. It's finished work, maybe I have free time, an hour, and by the time I set up everything for recording and go through warm up and things like that. But that's something I'm working on. And then always, I know a few people here locally who are involved with the theater of Oct22, and because of Tešnjar, it's a portion of Valjevo that
Old Town.
Yeah, Old Town, that essentially it's been touched, but extremely very, very little. It's the way the Ottoman Turks left it from during their time. So a lot of movies were filmed there. And so I'm in touch with people who are responsible for organizing when any producers come into Valjevo. And so there's something there, but obviously, again, I have a full-time job, so, but I'm open to it. I wish I had a little bit more going on than I do right now in that aspect, but then I also ask myself, when would I make the time? So, yeah, definitely something going on, but it's still a passion.
Tell us how you started acting. We didn't touch that in our first meeting, so I was about to ask you, how did you start initially in Serbian theater in Chicago?
So I always wanted to act, and then I obviously went to high school in the U.S. and there was drama, but wasn't what I was looking for. And so I always danced traditional Serbian folklore. And so
in Oct22?
No. Oct22 is
America.
In America.
What's it called?
Oct22 was the first group that I danced for. I spent some time being an assistant choreographer at Soko, and then Milan Andrijević, he led Oct22 in Belgrade, one of probably the most famous groups and ensembles in Serbia when we're talking about amateur ensembles, and there are very few professional ones, might I add, so these amateur ones are really on par, but he led that one. He was not just the choreographer, but I think he was the administrative director of the whole organization. So that's whether Oct22 is doing plays, whether it's choir, whatever it is. And so he's an amazing individual who's extremely experienced in that. And he came to the U.S. and I was working with him in Soko as an assistant, and then he started his own group called Oko Sokolovo, and Oko Sokolovo is based off the painting Oko Sokolovo, for the very simple reason that the guy featured in the painting is the brother of his grandfather. And so that's why he always wanted to name the group. So while I'm telling you all this, I was dancing in his group, and he writes his own plays. And a lot of times it was, for example, when there's some holidays, they'll want to mark it with a play, and whether it was, World War I, World War II, or kind of history, Serbian rising against the Turks back in the day. And so he wrote a play that kind of takes you through Serbia's history. And I was dancing at the time, so he would also have the ensemble come in, and it wouldn't be just like, all right, we're performing a dance, but it would kind of be intertwined with the story and a little bit of singing and things like that. And so obviously being a dancer at the time, I was going to be in the play, and the actors were there, and him and I were talking, and I said, you know, I always liked acting, and not wasn't trying to get a role. I didn't even think that was it. I was like, but never really, you know, got around to it, and you know. And so at the time, I had really long hair and a beard. I still have a beard, but a bit bigger beard. And so there is, if you know the famous painting from Kosovski boy, Kosovka devojka, I looked like the guy in the painting. And so he said, I want to add one scene. And it was essentially an interpretation of that scene where I'm laying down and she's pouring water. And so that was maybe like a 5-6 minute scene. And I really didn't have any type of jitters. I wasn't nervous. It just felt right. Like, this is what I need to do. I think I was more nervous for dancing, which I've been doing for 20 years. I mean, they're not even like big nerves, but literally I'd come out and I did that, and that's how I met the actors. And I joined the theater. They liked how I performed, and we just went from there. A few smaller roles with them and with Milan, and it kind of built up over the years.
So the last 3 roles were leading roles.
Leading roles. Right?
What was the play names of those 3?
So the first main role, and when I say first main role, I mean there's like 2 main roles, and I was one of them. There were a few before that were just not, the focus was on me. I definitely had lines and things like that, but the first one was Zona Zamfirova, Mane. The main character, that was my role, and so that was a really tough one. I mean, none of them are easy. They all have their own sphere and what they need and things like that. But essentially, I showed up. So I was doing smaller roles before that, and I get a call from Slavica. She was running Serbian theater at the time. She said, "Hey, we're gonna start a new play. Come show up." And at the time, I was working 2 jobs, and I said, "That's fine. Like, do you have a part for me?" Not anything like that, but I was just like, I'm gonna show up. If you have whatever it is, 2 lines, I'm showing up. You know, 5 pages, but whatever. I'm gonna show up. I just need to know, so I'm not, you know, I've got a lot of other obligations right now. And so she's like, no, definitely, I have a part for you. Come out. So I come out, and she hands me the script, and she says, you're gonna read Mana. So ironically, I think almost every Serbian person has watched or read the book Zona Zamfirova. I had not. I don't know how that slipped, because I like movies and I read too, but that kind of slipped past me. And so she tells me, you're gonna read Manet, and I start the first page, and the problem is the play is based in southern part of Serbia, and people in the southern part of Serbia have a different accent, and I'm from kind of central Serbia, it's different. And so that alone was a struggle, but this took place a while back, where generally speaking they use a lot of different words. I mean, they still do, but there were a lot of words that were used from the Turks and a few other ones that just Serbian words aren't used anymore. And so I start reading it, and you know, I'm on the first page. I'm like, okay, I'll grab a breather on the second page. Start reading the second page, third page, fourth page. Meanwhile, I'm struggling, and jokingly, obviously, and I turned to her and I was like, Slavica, you gave me the Macedonian version, because it's so much different than what Serbian is now. And she's like, no, keep reading. And so we went through, you know, 2-3 practices, and in the beginning we're just reading, and it's maybe like once a week, and you know, we show up, and after the third practice, I'm like, listen, this is the lead role. I don't want to screw up your play. If you have someone else, pick them, because I don't want to screw it up. And she tells me, she says, you know what? I like that about you. I'm like, what? She's like, I want you to do this. Because you're so honest with me, I want you to do this. So I'm like, okay, but how am I going to learn? She said, grab a case of Stella, and let's meet up one day, just you and me, and we're gonna keep rereading like the first few pages of the first scene. And whatever you say, I'm gonna correct you. We're gonna keep running it back, keep running it back, keep running it back, and I'm gonna record it for you so you can listen to it. And sure enough, brought Stella her favorite drink. Brings Stella, and I don't know if it was the Stella or the constant practice, but 3-4 hours of constantly going in circles and circles and circles, and it clicked for me. And after that, I mean, you gotta learn a lot of lines. So that was a huge challenge, and I mean, everyone had to learn it, but you know, someone shows up for, 10, 20 lines, and I'm through the whole play, which is pretty long. And so, I mean, we cut it down, we cut some things down, it was still an hour and a half, hour 45. And so we actually got it down to the point where we came out, the audience had a hard time understanding what we're talking about. So, I mean, that one was a good one. Kind of went on about it, but I thought it was an interesting story. Next one was Večna ljubav, Eternal Love, and that was based off the old, I believe it's Russian director, Cigane lete u nebo. It's essentially the life of Roma, and that's it has a little bit of a different story than the original, and the ending. I had the main role, and we had Milan actually wrote that play. So he obviously put in dancing and music, and that was a play. It was kind of like a musical, maybe not a typical musical, but a musical. So there, unfortunately, I don't sing as much as I'd like to, but I had a lot of dancing in that one, so that one was different. And then the last one, and we had 3 days, we had premiere and 2 more runs back to back to back, the weekend before Corona started and they closed everything down. So we had months and months of preparation, and we got so lucky because if we were scheduled for the weekend after, literally all our work would have gone down the drain. And that was Boeing Boeing. Boeing Boeing is a famous play. It's been played, I think it's the most played play in the whole world. It's in I don't know how many languages. It's kind of like just comedy. You come in and relax. I think a lot of TV shows and movies that you see today are based off the concepts there, like 2.5 Men. When you read the play, you're like, all right, the play is something for itself. But then you start acting and you realize, all right, some of the gags is similar to 2.5 Men. The concept, you've got one guy who's, ladies' man, this and that. You've got the other guy who's coming in, he's different, he's kind of learning from him. And so it was really nice to finally do a comedy and to do something a little bit more recent, I guess you're saying. Even that, the setting is in, I can't recall, I think like 50s, 60s, maybe a little bit more recent maybe, but I don't think past the 70s. And so that was fun, and you really see, I've watched a ton of, I love watching Friends, the 2.5 Men, and it was great because you pick those characters and you see what you can interpret into your character and how you can use it. So that was pretty cool. I wish we got to play it, to play a few more times. Hopefully we'll down the line, but it was a lot of work. There were 6 of us acting. We put a lot of time in, and even the set as amateurs cost $1,500. So, I mean, you look at a lot of famous plays and we bring out like a chair and a table. We had a complete room with doors that were opening, furniture and things like that, and it really added, but it was, I don't want to say it because we're talking about our own work, but I kind of have to. It's, I think, a pretty, as close as you can get to a professional play, the way we did that one. And it's not a knock on these other ones, but with the other ones had a bunch of people, and it's hard when you've got 30 people, even with professional actors, to get everything, together. This one's 6 people in sync, focused from day one, and it's like you have your role and you're running it back. So that was definitely a fun one. It's something that you just go to watch weekday even to get a little bit of a laugh, forget your daily troubles and everything that's going on. So. that was a fun one.
You had your what was your like a role model for acting and your favorite movies from your time? I mean, I have mine. I can
Yeah.
say it like it's Top Gun, you know, the Pulp Fiction, and that's my generation, you know, the '90s. That's when I was growing up.
Yeah.
What was your favorite movie and let's say a guy you idolized or something, an actor or somebody?
I think honestly, okay. So as far as movies growing up, obviously everyone in the U.S. you watch a movie like Shawshank Redemption. You watch, you know, some of those hits that you simply can't miss. And this by no means is the epitome of, and then now it's become laughingstock. When I was a kid growing up, I loved cars. So honestly, Fast and Furious were just like my movies, like the first two, three. But by no means did I watch
It's your
it and say,
generation, right?
yeah,
It's
I mean,
real
no,
acting.
yeah, but I mean, by no means did I watch that and say, okay, this is top-notch acting. It's, I mean, it's laughable at some points. But if we're talking about really good actors, I always like Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, I think, is a down-to-earth person. He's an amazing actor, but I can't say that, you know, mention him without mentioning Leonardo DiCaprio, without mentioning Robert De Niro, a few of those guys who are just amazing. And when you start acting, whether you have a knack for it or you don't have a knack for it, you have an idea in your head. You know, you watch the movies and things like that, and you sit down and you say your first sentence, and you're like, "Wow, I'm awful." And you realize how much work and preparation. It's like, it's not, I do it as a hobby. It's not a joke. The people that go to acting school, and whether that's just lessons or whether that's their degree and things like that. And it's very interesting recording yourself and really seeing what it looks like, whether you're getting ready for a play and you're recording something like this. I think you have one idea in your head, and it's a whole different story of what that looks like live. And so that's an interesting part, but honestly, a lot of people around me help point some things out that you don't even think about. You know, you think acting is people who aren't into that, like, oh, you show up, you say your lines, and that's it. It's enunciation, it's posture, it's a million things. Like, I'm sitting here right now, I know I'd never record something hump forward like this, you know what I mean? But it's things like that, especially in theater. Are you looking at the audience? Are you turned towards someone? You know, you turn your ass to the crowd, there's no way they can hear what you're saying. So unless it's like a gag where you have to be turned around and purposely, you're never gonna turn around and talk to the other wall. And it's things like that. But I mean, I had my dad also as a hobby actor. When he was younger, he still does some work with the theater now, and just a bunch of people from theater that have helped me out. I'm not gonna name them all right now, but people who have a lot of experience, like the guy who directed Boing Boing for us. He was in our theater. He actually just acted. I mean, it's been a few years since they filmed a short movie for a film festival in, I believe it's in LA, and I was supposed to be a part of that movie. Unfortunately, at the time, this was in 2019, I left, my vacation got moved, the filming time got moved, and I wasn't there for filming, so they got someone else, and I really wish I was a part of that, not because of the success that the movie has had now, just because it would have been such an interesting experience to actually see what a set looks like. And that movie was actually nominated for several awards. I don't think it won any awards in LA, and they just finished, they were at the Moscow Film Awards just now. So it's a pretty big movie, but it also gives you, puts into perspective the type of people I was able to work with and learn from. Like Igor, the guy who directed it, he directed Boing Boing, and now, he's at Moscow Film Festival. He was all tidied up. They actually thought, they wrote an article about it, they thought he was James Bond when he showed up at the red carpet. Slavica in the other theater, she was part of the theater in Niš. Mila Andrijanic, like I said, he led Oct22 in Belgrade for 20-something years. These are people with pretty nice resumes, for lack of a better word right now, but they're extremely experienced, and I had a chance to learn from all of them. And it's the best thing you can do when you start something. You keep an open mind, especially something with acting, and listen to everyone and try it. Something will work for you, something won't. You know, there are different types of actors. There's serious actors, there's comedy, things like that. So it was quite a ride, and it's something that you learn every day. And obviously you look up to, like I said, some of those big names, but you can learn a lot from amateur actors. You can learn, it's experience. The main thing in acting is experience. You're not going to show up your first recording and win an Oscar. That's just, you know, and I feel bad for Leonardo DiCaprio because he deserved it so many times, but I think he got that one for, what was the...
Revenant?
Revenant, yeah, The Revenant.
Finally.
So I mean, you know, you can be an actor, but it's like that year someone has a really good year, and they're like, oh, we'll leave him for next year, you know. So yeah.
So do you plan to continue acting here in Serbia?
I do, and I mean that goes back to what we talked about. I'm trying to do some things now to kind of build my resume. As far as plays, I've got 7 down in my resume, and I've got dancing as an experience, a few other things that I've been involved with. There are, like I said, movies are filmed here. I'm not at this point, honestly, looking to be an extra. I mean, it's a nice experience, but I've kind of been there. I'm part of like the film festival, the Serbian Film Festival in Chicago, so you meet some famous actors. Like I've met Miloš Biković, I met Maria Karanen. You know, I've been around it, so I think being an extra is a nice thing for somebody who has a lot of time to kill, you know, and they get to see all that for the first time. I'm looking for, you know, can I get a role for 2-3 sentences? That's okay. Something that I can dedicate it and you know, get it right. And whether it's a movie, whether it's a TV show, I'd definitely be open to doing a play. But obviously, my profession is something else, so I'm not constantly on top of it. It takes time, and I'm passively looking. When I say passively, I'm the people that are involved in that kind of have that department here in Valjevo. They know where I'm at. They have my phone number. They have my contact information. You know, if they have something for me, they'll reach out. Awesome. Until then, you know, it is what it is. But it's
great. So, back to your profession.
Yeah.
In engineering, do you follow any let's say trend topics like Elon Musk? What do you think about his endeavors? He's doing all sorts of shit, like wanna send us to Mars. He wants to investigate our brain a little more thoroughly, and he's doing the electric cars and everything. Is he a role model, or what do you think about it?
Props to whoever can build something, and you know, essentially from scratch, from PayPal, and who has the guts and the balls to pull that money out and, you know, not retire, but throw it at another thing that could be a risk and build what they can build. So he's definitely brilliant. I mean, I don't think there's anyone out there who's gonna say, oh, he's an idiot. Maybe he says something that's controversial to someone, but I don't know if I necessarily agree with everything. I don't follow him regularly either. What I think about as far as trends, I'm obviously, I have to be up to date. Like through LinkedIn, I'll follow a lot of companies that do stuff for automation, whether that's Fanuc, Kuka, or we're talking about sensors with Banner, IFM, you know, the list goes on, whether it's pneumatics or electronics. When it comes to technology, I'm amazed by it, but I also think, especially now as time is going on, we're really pushing the line with, you interfering with, I think, with humanity, you know what I mean, and machine. Like, I fully support understanding a person's brain, but going into and changing and altering something and hooking up to the machine, downloading, you know,
that's the trick.
And
so the main idea is about the Neuralink. There are a lot of guys are working on it, but I think he's the first. He's the first and who, let's say, made so much progress. The main thing is that our interface with our thoughts and transferring and everything is too slow. You need to type something, you know what I mean? So they're thinking about to insert something, I don't know, some chip with needles or something, antennas, and the main goal and the end result will be that we can just engage somehow and download everything we need from our brains. So what?
As fascinating as
it
sounds,
it has a lot of issues. You know, like
a lot of issues. Here's the thing.
How are you gonna like give the permission to that kind of operation? What if you don't want to download?
See, I'm not even.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Then I have to quote Spider-Man here. But with great power comes great responsibility. Here's the issue. People, let's start with that, are natural beings. And you see with, I don't have my phone here, but you know, you got yours. You got people today, they go out for lunch and they're both on their phones. We've already lost a lot of that natural communication. We've lost, you know, touch. We've lost, if you ask me, we've already lost a sense of reality. So now we want to hook up our brains and completely eliminate the physical touch that we have. I don't like reading a book on an iPad or a Kindle. It sucks. I want to feel the papers, and you know, okay, there's the, you know, trees and things like that. I agree. But there's something, and I think anyone who likes to read a book is going to agree with me, that you can't compare a Kindle, any type of tablet, to an actual book where you can mark it down, where, you know, you're reading and you spill your coffee a little bit and it has meaning to you, you know, you remember that, and it's things like that. As far as downloading, those are technicalities, but how do you, you know, right now, a million things race to your mind. I think the problem is, for example, you want to download, you're writing an essay or, you know, story, whatever, and you want to transfer that onto the computer. Well, okay, these are probably technicalities that aren't going to be up to us to solve, but your mind, think about the stuff that you process and the stuff that's going through your head, even when you're working on something. Yeah, you're concentrated, but the minute, for example, you start typing, you start thinking yourself, man, I'm really hungry. Is that going to come out on the screen? I mean, that's technicality, but they probably have a way to resolve that, but that's something to think about. But I think before anything else, one thing that you brought up is the aspect that, oh, it's kind of slow while we transfer information to the computer, this and that. It's not a bad thing necessarily. I think humans are meant to move at a certain pace, and we already move a lot quicker than I think the pace we're supposed to move at, with cars, planes, generally just transportation. And then you talk about the web, you know, and it's processing information. And before you want to figure out what a word means, you got to grab a dictionary. You want to find out something about a certain topic, you grab an encyclopedia, and you know, you gotta get the encyclopedia, you gotta actually figure out which one it is that you need, then you gotta open it up, and then maybe you read something and you go, I don't know what that means. Well, now you gotta go back to the dictionary, and right now that's all, okay, what does this word mean? You look up the word, or you go on and you look up a topic and you don't know something, but you've probably done the same thing. You look up, you want an answer to one question? you end up with more questions a lot of times than answers. Because you'll go to look up one topic and before you know it, you have 67 tabs open because something else caught your eye. Whether, it's like a weight loss pill or it's something that has to do with that topic or something else, and we're constantly bombarded with information, and I think that information is too much to process. Now we want to hook our brains up and get even faster. It's like, I think there's a certain point when you need to draw the line and say, let's slow down a little bit. And that's one thing that goes back to, especially the U.S. The U.S. moves so quickly. There's other parts of the world that move a lot slower, and I think that's a good thing. Like, what does the average person live? Maybe 70 years, something like that. Depends from country to country. Let's make the most of them. Let's not look at, because when you say, okay, I'm going to transfer this essay, and it used to take me 20 hours to write. Now for my brain, I'll write it in 5. There's a lot of junk in our brain when you think about how we want to say something. So like, let's say I want to word a sentence and I'm going to change it back, or I'm going to go, and then, again, it's coming back to the semantics of it, how it's going to work, but it's not a bad thing. Maybe that essay should take 20 hours. And not just that, how does that affect other aspects of our life? You know what I mean? You're an engineer, it takes you this long to design it. There's a reason, because you're working and maybe you can't figure out how to solve something, but you turn around and you see an answer somewhere within something else. You get up, you walk to a shop, you go outside, you see something in nature, you see something on a different machine, and you get an idea. What happens when we just hook our brains up and then you have your boss like, well, why is this taking you 6 hours? It should, only take you 3 hours. We don't know how it's going to work, but it's not natural, and we're already beyond. I think you'd agree with me, way beyond with what's natural. And then it comes down to, how do you draw the line where we're using this to our advantage and using tools, and helping society grow, as opposed to just saying, what can we do with technology? Let's speed it up, let's go faster, let's go bigger, let's go for. It's just like, okay, maybe we're not meant to go that far. Maybe we're not meant to go into that sphere of technology being combined with humans, and it is going in that direction. And it's just like, I think someone needs to.
So when we rack up the country here and go let's say beyond the speeding limit and wreck everything here, there's an idea that we should go to Mars. What do you think about that?
I think it's idiotic, because it's one of those things. It's like, take care of what you have. I've got this shirt on, whether it's regular shirt, designer shirt. Why do I have to take care of this shirt only if I know I can't buy another one? Right? So I'm going to use it, I'm going to wear it, but what does that mean? I can go buy another shirt and I'm going to take this off after, I'm going to mount the floors. And you can't compare Earth to something so small, but I think if you tell people, there's a lot of people that are going to litter. There's companies that are polluting the system, whether it's sewers flowing directly into oceans and seas, and it's like, once you give them, this is without even providing a solution out, right? Once you provide people with a solution out, how do you expect them to take care of what we have now? Do you get what I mean? And so, even that, getting to Mars, how long would it actually take? Which generation would see Mars?
Not ours,
I have not, so I don't want to get too far on the topic because I have not done a ton of reading, and I'm pretty positive that I won't be part of any crew that goes to Mars.
So they say we should like test those facilities that are on Mars, will be on Mars. They say we should test it in unnatural habitats let's say it's not unnatural, it's unhuman habitats in let's say in our environment, like Sahara Desert or
Yeah.
some shit like that, Antarctic, where you basically cannot live, and the terms of living are similar to Mars. So we should do like a trial run.
So,
Makes, you know the capsules there?
no, I get it, but again,
Closed loop to live.
we have a habitat that works perfectly for people.
Mm-hmm. But
And we're looking for a way out and creating a habitat that isn't adapted for us. You see the irony in that? Like, let's fuck this up and create a situation suitable for us in a different place that is not suitable for us. Like, so I don't want to say something because I like to talk about things when I'm 100% sure. One thing I know, there have been discovered remains of water or whatever on Mars. Now, I can't recall where the information comes from, so I'm not going to take it as, as this is what it is. But I don't know if you know, have scientists determined these are remains of water? So this is a planet that's had maybe one, maybe it was identical to Earth thousands of years ago, and now it's done. So you're trying to create something that's basically past its due date, or the other thing, where this planet is just getting water, and this is all, this is not based off anything, but I'm just going through the concept in either situation, right? So say this planet is just starting to have water. And in order for a planet, if you look at science, just base it off the science, leave, religion and those things out of the discussion. If you base it off science, it's taken millions of years to get to what Earth is right now. And we see it changing even in the course of 50 years, 100 years. So you want to go to a planet that has, does it have ice layers or something like that? And this is all vaguely what I recall, but I'm just talking about it from a philosophical level. So if this is something that needs to come to the conditions that Earth is in today, it's going to, take it thousands of years, 10,000 years, millions of years. So what are we going to do? Show up there and speed up that process? Well, great, we just screwed up another planet. You know what I mean? So I'm not talking about fact-based what's going on the planet, but two sides. One is that it's not naturally where it's supposed to be for us to inhabit it. And the other, it's past what we need it to be because that's how it's naturally evolved it. So we're ruining Earth, that's where we need it to be, and we're looking to a planet that hasn't developed, and we're already talking about how we're going to screw it up, or a planet, whether it's Mars or a third, fourth planet, whatever, or we're looking at a planet that was what it used to be, and naturally, or maybe there were some beings there that screwed up how we screwed up, and now we're going to go there and fix that. Let's fix this. You know what I mean?
We should first fix this.
Let's fix this. Because I know how I'm going to live on Earth that works. I don't know how I'm going to live on Mars or whatever other planet they, decide to go on, or whatever's suitable. And quite frankly, in our solar system, nothing is really suitable. They look at Mars because it's the closest and most identical, but realistically, how much different is Mars than Earth?
We don't know.
Exactly.
We have no idea.
It's not like, they got highways over there and they're rushing through rush hour traffic to get to work, so...
What do you think about aliens? Are we alone in here, in this universe, whatever it is?
The term aliens has like a bad connotation to it, but...
Because of the movies?
No, not because of the I mean, to some extent because of the movies, the big guy with the round head, but I've talked to people about this, like, you look up and, you go, just to put in perspective how small we are. Like, I was in Greece a few weeks back, and I'm on an island, and you're sitting on this island, and you see the sea, and it's gigantic, and you literally feel like a little speck. And then you open up a map, you can barely see that island on a map, And then we have our whole solar system, and we have how many other solar systems? There's not a single person that can convince me that we are the only living beings of this nature out there. I mean, someone could probably do the math what the chances are, but you want to tell me out of this whole solar system and other solar systems that we are the only ones by chance? Am I imagining a big head green alien with big black eyes? No. Maybe they look like that, maybe they don't. Maybe they care about Earth, maybe they don't give a rat's ass. But the point is, to me, it's improbable that we are the only beings of this nature. You know what I mean? And whether those other beings are man-eating beings or they're the nicest thing you could possibly imagine, I don't know. But I honestly think it's stupid to believe that we are the only, you know?
I think so too. The first time in history, the Congress of the United States of America is, let's say, starting the investigations and the committees that are going to investigate the UFOs. The military had some video footage and some radar footage of some objects that are the closest thing that they are imagining that they can, let's say, compare it with are the hypersonic drones that are now in talks with the Russia and Ukrainian war. They're talking about that the Russians have those kind of missiles and those kind of drones, and they're used over there. So that's the idea. The only thing they can compare it with, you know, like it goes from I don't know, 0 to 5 max.
It's crazy acceleration
in a few seconds. So they cannot explain it. And they started to serious talk when the Congress is doing investigation.
So I mean, from what so I feel like this came from a credible source, but it's so far back. I mean, we're talking like AP US in high school. From what I think, there is someone who's head of alien activity or something like that within the government years back. I believe, and this is something that I heard a long time ago, so maybe not naive, maybe it was a joke by the, teacher at the time, whatever, but the one thing you're talking about back in 2018 or 2019, it was on the news, and I mean, I'm not talking about some online, it was on the news, and people either don't know about this, or maybe they've forgotten about it, you can look it up, literally sighting of, I don't want to call it but yeah, it's an identified object that the military was chasing, and at a point in a certain time, and it's irregular flight patterns compared to what we're used to, like you're talking about. It can go up, it can go down. It's more like, drone-like patterns, not like airplanes where they have certain turning radius and things like that. And then it begs the question, there's videos, and it's obviously so easy to edit videos now and make up anything, but you see flying objects that are identified go underwater, go above, and if it can fly on some alternative fuel source, if it does move through the air, then what would prevent them from moving through the water? You know what I mean? If it can move through our atmosphere, the same object, and move outside our atmosphere, why not move through water? So even that's not out of the question, We think, oh, how can the same object? Well, we're thinking of a conventional airplane. Why wouldn't they be? I mean, we have the amphibious, like trucks and things like that. They go on land. They're not exactly economical on either, but they can go on both. So why is it that something can't be created, that can do both? And so it was on the news, it was brought up, and to the point where it's being brought up to the public begs the question, how much is not being brought up to the public? So you bring it up, there's an investigation, there's obviously something going on. But I mean, like I said, it would be stupid to think there is no life no intelligent life outside of human beings, and the fact that we call ourselves intelligent life, you know what I mean? And then we go and we screw up forests and throw garbage around and things like that, and pollution. It begs the question, how much of an intelligent species are we?
Yes, they say we look like a. When you take a small camera and go through our system, through our organism, you see the beautiful sighting of our organs and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you come out and see one the black spot, which is, for example, cancer cell.
Okay.
And what does a cancer cell does? It's black and it's ugly, and it eats around everything that's healthy, right?
Yeah.
So when you do the same with our, let's say, land, the complete planet Earth, you go with your camera and your drone, you see the night sightings and you know the beautiful nature and everything goes in balance, and then you come and visit the city. It's black. People are doing what they're doing, you know, the usual commute, eating, sleeping, working and everything. So they're eating everything they need around, using the resources to build, to eat, you know. And we are creating basically something that we only need.
Yeah.
Nature doesn't need the things we do, most of them, right?
Yeah.
So they say we're like a cancer cell to our country, to our planet.
Usually cities are made by waterways, they're made by, whether that's a river, whether that's, you know, a port by sea, by the ocean. And nature will throw a tsunami, so it's its natural way of fighting, cleaning itself, and the people disappear.
Like some kind of a reboot.
Exactly, but it's only a matter of time before we come back and we build. And when you look at anything that you build, especially giant cities, you're displacing a lot of natural materials from one portion of Earth to another. The Earth itself, without us, is in perfect balance. It has tectonic plates that move around and shift and so forth, and it does go through its own ice ages of cooling and heating and things like that. But it's generally well balanced, and so we throw that balance off. And I think it's only a matter of time. Like we just, it's got, what I'm talking about earlier, you want to go fast, well now they want to go higher. Someone builds a big building, someone needs to build an even bigger one, someone needs, you know, it's fascinating what engineering does, and I'm an engineer, but in the end, we have to kind of look at what we're doing and ask ourselves, at what point are we playing God? You know what I mean? Just so many things like that. Like yesterday there was a show on, what was it? I thought it was National Geographic. I think it was Discovery or something like that. And they were talking about a bridge they were building somewhere in California. And they essentially put giant shock absorbers, bearings, and it's a bridge that curves, and I'm kind of embarrassed because I didn't know anything about this as an engineer and haven't followed it, but essentially they put giant shock absorbers, kind of like bearings, at every single post, so when there is, you know, an earthquake, and it's just like, all right, there's an earthquake, that's happening in the earth for some reason, and maybe it's trying to regain balance. Now you've placed this in this area, wherever it is, and maybe nature wants to take it down so it can return to balance, but now you're keeping it there. And it's not to say that they wouldn't rebuild a regular bridge, but there's some things like that that are real head scratching. And it's not that we can't survive without those things. Like, we could be in nature, we could be hunting, planting, and it's not going to create that type of imbalance on Earth. Just how, you know, when animals kill each other in the wild, it's part of nature, you know, but it doesn't throw off. Like, take a look at, I watched a short video on Australia, and before they started inhabiting Australia, Australia was in perfect balance. The type of species, the type of animals that are there, and what happened is people came along and, you know, they have a problem with for example, they're trying to raise sheep because they saw it's a great place to raise sheep. Well, then they have problems with, I forgot which animal, I don't want to say wolves because I'm not sure if it was wolves, but it was constantly attacking their sheep, right? So they have that giant fence that runs through, and I can't remember the name, through Australia, that is essentially partitioned off a certain part of Australia. And what it's done is, while it was in perfect balance, for example, kangaroos, they had a certain predator, they had certain aspects that kept their population in check. Well, now suddenly they blocked it off, and now they're going wild. And that carries, so then people, they will say, oh, well, we're going to correct that. Instead of pulling out that fence they created, they go, we're going to add something else. And that something else just has a domino effect of the negative problems that it has. And they introduce new species that, for example, maybe don't have any predators in that area. And then their population is in check. Meanwhile, they're maybe feeding off of domestic animals. And it's constantly like, Australia is a perfect example of that because they're isolated and you can really see, you know, it's just one country and you can see everything that they do, what effect it has and how it trickles down. And I'm not knocking on Australia. We do it in Europe, we do it in Africa, we do it in the States, we do it in Asia, wherever, you know, on all the continents. But it's a perfect example because, you know, when you have political borders, it's hard to isolate Europe and say this is a problem. And there was something else that I saw. There was on National Geographic, there was a show and they're going around different European countries. And there was one episode on Greece. And there is a canal that they built in Greece. And just like any canal, you think about that, like water wasn't supposed to pass through there. But we did that for our convenience. And now that water does pass through there, for example, you can introduce the issue of flooding. You know, you change it at the very least, you know, but it's things like that. We really, I think, let ourselves do more than we should.
Yeah, definitely. What about engineering? Basically, your field of expertise is design engineer, right?
Automation specifically, but
design for automation. And what is where do you pull your inspiration to do design work? What's your drive?
So,
creative-wise,
I think the aspect of obviously.
You said before you liked cars. Is it from there?
Yeah, I mean, as a kid growing
love?
up, I was always around cars. My neighbor had a body shop, so I was around it. But I also loved drawing. There's a, you know, with theater, there's a certain creative side to me that I do love.
Artistic.
Arts, exactly. And so, being an engineer, I think automation design, gives you that freedom to be an engineer and still have some creativity. And I think that creativity depends on you. Obviously, sometimes you have certain parameters that you need to work with. But I think that creativity comes in different forms, where it's something as simple like, you get really stuck on it and you experience that, you know, with something, you know, you're being presented with it like this, and you're trying to figure out how to make it work like this, and you know, you're building around that, and then you realize that if you just turn it like this, and there is space around it, it doesn't have any other interferences, that it'll work. So sometimes it's something as little as that, but when it comes to custom automation, you build something and people don't get what it means in engineering to build something that never existed before. 90% of engineering, if not more, isn't reinventing the wheel. It's using the wheel and other components to make something that will make life easier, that will make, you know, it's getting harder and harder now with everything that we have to make something innovative, right? So I don't know how many times I've had an idea and wondered, hey, is there a solution for this? And, you know, I'll look up Amazon and yeah, there's a solution for that. Or I'll look up patents and I'll think something is new. And it's like some very specific things that you think don't exist, patents and things like that, and they do exist. So when you say you're creative, something new, like, you know, Tishma, it builds cartoners, it builds case packers. Building a new case packer, no two case packers, unless the company orders two exactly the same ones, are going to be exactly the same, right? You know, that you're going to need to adapt to a new product and things like that. And it does become a little bit tedious, but generally speaking, design is design, right? Whether it's mechanical, whether it's graphic, you do have that freedom. So stems from my love to draw, my love for cars, and I think it would be a completely different job if it didn't have that aspect of creativity. And one of my past managers was they needed some type of gasket, and they couldn't get it right away, and they just needed a quick fix. He literally used...
What is a gasket? Say it's for some people who don't know.
So a gasket would just be any device, kind of like a seal that prevents any type of leaks. But he was working, I think, in the oil industry, and they needed a solution. I mean, until the seal comes in, and he actually used the rubber from the edge of a balloon, because that was literally all he needed just to get something in. And it's creativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think
little tweaks.
Past generations, especially like my dad, they didn't have the option to have everything always new, everything. They had to, and I think they do a lot better job of being creative. But it's like when you break something at home, and that's probably not worth taking to a shop or a service or something like that, how do you fix it by yourself, right? How do you attach something, maybe make it even better than it was? As long as you have the time and the patience, there's room for creativity, but it can get kind of tiring.
Do you have any design projects that you would like to work on? Like invent something, make some patents in some area? How often do you get a chance to have challenges like that, like when you can be like...
So I mean, patents, you know as well as I do, patents are a really weird thing. Patents, you can invent something new and have problems getting a patent for it. You know, they send the paperwork back for you, or you can have something very, very basic and it will be patent worthy. And so when you say, you know, would I like to build something, there were a few things that came to mind, but I've gone through like Google Patents and looked at it, and it's like something like that already exists, and you get to a point where it's like you want to create something, but you're using like 2-3 existing patents.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that I wanted to bring up with those. It's just at the tip of my tongue. So back in college, we had you have your senior design project, and the way that started out was each one of us was given the task of thinking of, I believe it was, I don't want to lie, but say something like 20 issues that don't have a solution to them.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 possible solutions for everyone. So that gives you 60 different possible design ideas. And so everyone does that, and then you get into groups of like 4 or 5 people, so now suddenly that's multiplied. You've got 300 different ideas, you know. And so we did that, and we did, there was the issue of someone had brought up not being able to reach high shelves. And this was back in our senior design project, was in 2017. And so what I proposed is, and this was just a simple way to show the concept, is basically turn your cabinets, your kitchen cabinets, into drawers. And so what I did, it was a very simple concept. You open the door, you slide out your first one, and then the top ones drop down to your counter level. Mm-hmm. And so what we had then was just a pulley system. You have a certain budget that you have to stay within. Now, especially when I work, there's different kind of springs that you can do, shock absorbers that would work differently. How you can even make it. The professor didn't want us to make it plug-in, but if you made it plug-in, obviously you get a motor and it's going up and down. Now you look at like not even engineering sites. You look at Instagram. How many cabinets have you seen lately that work on a concept where you open up your top, cabinet and the whole thing drops down like this? or sliding ones. Like they always had the sliding ones but I'm talking about the top ones that will come out. And so it was something like that I thought about pursuing. And I think immediately after I started working, I already saw ways that it could be made better. Like you're just not aware of all the commercial components that are out there. So for example, if I tell you, we need tracks, you're gonna say we've got Highwind, we've got THK, we've got a million, and they have so many different options now that it's not even, straight, it's not linear, they have curves, they have things like that. We made our own tracks now, right? And we made them out of aluminum profiles and are using white grease to lube them up, and it doesn't slide the best. So definitely a concept I could have built on. That was probably the closest, and I mean obviously this was a group project, so that was probably, when I say we came closest, to patenting something that was that didn't exist. But now you look on the market, everything moves so quickly. There's something that uses that design, whether somebody saw it then or, I don't know if we posted it online or somebody else came up with, it's very difficult now to come up with a patent for something. And, back in the day there was, when the first iPhone came up, can't remember exactly what it is patented, because it's, somebody says this, somebody says that, but essentially that rectangle design with, a touchscreen, I believe they patented that, where they had a lawsuit with Samsung after, when they released the same type of phone, came up I think with the first Galaxy. And so when you look at it, it's like, you can't believe that literally they patented a flat touchscreen. They didn't patent the way the touchscreen is built, because if you recall, Samsung built screens for Apple for the longest time because they just couldn't keep up with production. They patented literally design, but then you can go ahead and design something like, I had an idea for, I used to ride pedicabs, for a new type of motor, and essentially like a kit, and it's just like you have to be really careful there, because okay, you use a motor, are you running into somebody else's patent, or are you just using components and making a kit and calling it a kit? So there's things like that. I've had lots of ideas, but nothing that's like, okay, this is revolutionary, or this is, to me, that's worthy of a patent. You know what I mean? And there's, I love it, my fiance will every once in a while come up with ideas, and there's things like that. She says, imagine, and women deal with it, they come home, they're tired from going out, they want to take off their makeup, and they're like, she's like, I wish there's just something home, like a box, you put your face in and it washes your face, can we build that? And it's just like, yeah, we can build that, but it's not really a thing that you can patent, right? When you think about anything that's gonna wash, you're talking about pumps, you're talking about what type of power source, you know what I mean? How do you make sure that's strong enough to where it's wiping off makeup that's made, they have all like the stuff that they put on so it doesn't come off and not hurt a person. And even if you do build that, you're gonna make a lot of money, a lot of women are gonna want it if that thing doesn't cost $1,000. You know what I mean? How do you build something like that and not have it cost a lot? And so there are ideas out there, it's like, how feasible are they? And how much do they, how worth it are they? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm giving up an idea, but I can guarantee that probably every other woman has come home and said, I wish I could just come home and get my makeup off, and like, and that's the trick, I think, with engineering. The best designs in engineering are the simplest ones. And then I think, like, especially in automation, I think some engineers, they really like to do everything themselves and things like that, and use a lot of components. The truth is, it's a lot more economical, and it makes sense to go with a commercial component that maybe takes care of what you want to take care of. They're going to give you a warranty, they're going to work with you to make sure that the task you need to take care of is met as far as they're concerned, as far as their aspect of it. And I think when you're an automation engineer, you just need to have you're not a mile wide and an inch deep. You need to be a mile wide and a 500 feet deep, maybe not a mile, but deep. But you need to know about metals, you need to know about pneumatics, you need to know, and so it's quite wide, maybe where it is a mile wide and a mile deep. So don't waste your time recreating something that already exists. And there are things out there to make your life easier. If you need to set up a unit, you need to set up an entire line. Don't waste your time making a gripper, figuring out how to grip something. Call Shunk. Call even SMC has made, you know, strides in that department and say, I need this. It looks like it's more expensive face value when you say, oh, this costs this much, but when you think about how much engineering time you're going to put in, how much an assembler is going to take, and then debug, like, what if it doesn't go the way you wanted it off the bat? So it's not, you know, I think some people look at it as like not wanting to do the work. It's not a problem to do the work, but if you've got 21 weeks to do a project, you can't spend a week on a gripper. You know what I mean?
And create, you know, the
something that's subpar.
Yeah, I don't know if you can make it better than Shaw.
Exactly.
You can't.
Exactly.
So look at 200 years of innovation.
Yeah.
You cannot compete with that. You know, it's silly. So take what you need and build it, right?
Exactly. I mean, I
Make
think
it simple.
they have a job to do, you know, and they have their software, all those companies, and they have their reps, and that's why they're there. You know what I mean? You're not, I feel like some engineers feel like they're not doing their job in automation, or they feel like they need to prove something. Like, the fact that you're there and you're working on this machine speaks volumes, you know what I mean, about the schooling that you finished, the education that you received, the work you've done before, your technical knowledge, your hands-on knowledge is going to show up in your machine whether you use a commercial component or not. You know, it's like recreating, you know, to me equivalent of a gripper is a conveyor. Like, why recreate a regular conveyor? I'm not talking about custom ones that, you know, are going to be really tough. Why would you go ahead and just like a typical conveyor start building it yourself?
Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, right? And so it's things like that I think just need to be put into perspective. Shouldn't feel embarrassed about reaching out to vendors and saying, hey, let's run the analysis, tell me what to use. Do you stand by it? Yes, we stand by it. All right, it doesn't work, I turn it on and say solve it. And it's not like I don't want to do it. If I don't need to, I want to make sure that this machine has the best quality parts. I want to make sure that a manufacturer behind the part is standing by it. What good does it do if I, for example, ran the analysis in their software and didn't consult them at all? Sure, I should look at it myself. I should double check it and say, okay, this is the payload, this is the reach, and so forth. And you need to be able to do that by yourself. But and check what they do. Always double check. You know, measure twice, cut once. But they're there for a reason. You know.
What do you think our machines will look like in 50 years?
What type of machines?
That we're building now. Or packaging, automation, robot cells. Do you see something that will, let's say, disappear and something new will show up? What direction will we go?
I think that, for example, we do a lot of things that run on conveyor lines, and we do have lots of pneumatics, and we might have several stations that take care of one task. And when you have a continuous machine, right now it does make sense, especially with the cost of robots. But I think as time goes on, robots are going to become cheaper. They're going to become quicker. Like, there's, you know, if you have a Tishma cartoner case packer running at, you know, 200 cartons per minute, you need a hell of a robot, or maybe even two, to keep up with, for example, bottle loading or something like that. And especially if there's height differences. I'm not saying you can't make it work, but then you really do look at how much does it cost to have two robots? You know, how much it costs to have a Delta? They're expensive.
That's the limitation for now.
But I think as time goes on, robots are going to get cheaper. And when going back to what we talk about, how much time is spent, you know, tuning and synchronizing different components. And I think you know, you're going to have chains and sprockets and you're going to have gears, but I kind of see them being phased out a little bit. When you do have robots being quicker, yeah. So that's my thought. I think it's starting to get a little bit outdated. I'm not talking about Tishma, just generally those types of machines that are. And you look at robots right now, collaborative robots that are coming in. Collaborative robots. Not everyone's grabbing for collaborative robots. They're kind of slower. Even though you don't have to have physical guarding, you still want to have some sensors around them. You still want to make sure they stop on time. So not everyone has transitioned over to those, but like they're getting faster. They're carrying bigger payloads. And I mean, when you look at countries like Germany, like China, Japan, the U.S., they're using these big robots. They're using different.
What's the difference between the normal ones, the Fennec and Kuka, and the collaborative? Just to explain to the public.
So I mean, Fennec and Kuka both have collaborative robots. The difference with collaborative robots is they will react on impact. They also have sensors to notice when someone is near them, and they can be programmed in different ways.
So they're more aware of the environment?
Not more, they're aware of their environment. I'm completely, it's relative, you know. You wouldn't be putting, for example, light curtains or something like that.
You don't need to.
You know, with a collaborative robot, if they were 100%. But a lot of them will be like smaller, like 4 or 5 axis robots that are going to be in a shop that are maybe just doing a task with like drilling something in, like down smaller line, whereas opposed to regular robots, they're set to run a cycle and they will hit anything in its way if it's within its reach. So that's, I guess, for those who don't know, that's the difference between. Now it comes at a cost, right? You do eliminate physical guarding, which when you're buying a regular robot, you have to be aware of that you're gonna, in addition to the robot, you need guarding. So that's an additional cost that upfront the collaborative robot looks more expensive. But the one thing where collaborative robots can't really compare with regular robots is they don't have the cycle time, they don't have the speed of regular robots. So, but that's all something that's, you know, with the way that it's doable, the way technology's going. That's why the amount of engineering time that goes into tasks where you could literally just put a robot, have it do this, you know, design the end-of-arm tooling is truly significant. And right now, robots can't replace, you know, standard lines and things like that because they're just tuned and tweaked and they're doing the same thing with very, very little mistakes. They're running you know, they're running like 99%. But like I said, I think that's one thing down the line that changes. And I doubt I'm wrong, because when you take a look at going back, how certain machines have replaced and how things that are computerized, robotic, I think they're just simply leaning that way.
So the robots would change us all.
Yeah.
Eventually.
I mean, you look at, what is it, Boston Robotics, I think it is, that has that robot that's walking by itself, jumping, reading. I mean, what's limiting 4-axis palletizer, a 6-axis robot from running faster, from, you know, being as productive? So yeah, there's definitely going to be space for engineering standard, you know, old school, but I think that's going to be phased out, and I think you can already see it in a lot of places. Whether it's 2-axis gantries, 3-axis gantries, right? Think about without a gantry, you want to get something from here to here. You're essentially building a gantry without the gantry, right? You're going to put some you're gonna put some pneumatic cylinders or slides and things like that, and you essentially created this thing that already exists, right? You put a vacuum on it and you're done. You're going from point A to point B, or you put a gripper. So that's why I think most of automation is just moving things or putting things, like obviously there's welding, obviously there's piecing things together, but automotive industry, a lot of it is just robots going
moving shit around.
Moving shit around. So
it says like automation. The word is automatos, and the origin of the word is the one that moves himself.
Yeah.
You know, that moves around
exactly
on his own. It's basically what you're trying to do. The machine that's doing the work on its own.
So yeah, I think a lot of it going forward is going to be a lot of conveyors, but just conventional conveyors, maybe like cleated and things like that, with more robotics, more vision systems, sensors, because you're getting to now at this point with scanners, like for example, we have light curtains and things like that. They're getting pretty close, if not there. I haven't kept up with it too much because they're still expensive, but literally a scanner that you put up in this room and it scans everything, and you can mute it for certain things. They're having issues with ambient light and things like that, but it's getting where even certain sensors are going to be outdated, right? You're gonna have a purpose for a proc sensor. You're gonna have, but we're talking about safety. I think it's only a matter of time before conventional guarding, like fence guarding and light curtains, become a thing of the past. It's only going to be maybe like lower budget because it's going to be cheaper, and then somebody says, all right, let's go that route. But if we're talking about technology as technology,
there's going to be one thing on the top, and that's it.
That's it. you know what I mean? You're going to come in and you're going to have a few, probably unfortunately, but you're going to have a few operators who are going to be there to make sure everything's running smoothly. He walks into the room, robot stops, or robot slows down. They can even be programmed now. It senses someone in their vicinity, and it slows down and lets the person come through. If they bump, it stops and things like that. So
it's going to be good. Yeah. So about science in your work, how much science are you using in your operation, everyday work? Are there any science challenges that you're facing, like some calculations, basic or advanced, no matter what?
In automation, it's more basic. I mean, it's calculating ratios, chain lengths. You're looking at robot reaches. Mm-hmm. I think more of it comes to basic math when you're looking at fitments and things like that, mm-hmm. looking at tolerances. You always have to have a respect for science, for math. For example, I think in automation, a big thing is knowing materials, knowing their wear and tear. What's best? Do you go for something that's you're going for like plastics, where you're using Delrin, or you're going to metal? I think that's maybe, if you exclude like basic math, that might be one of the biggest aspects. Like, okay, this is going to experience lots of wear and tear. Do we want to Teflon coat it? Do we want to do a hard coat? Do we want to anodize it? There's things like that. So you can't say science doesn't play a role in engineering, and engineering is science. It's mechanical, bachelors of science and mechanical engineering. But I'm speaking for automation. There's going to be people who are working with HVAC or working with something else where they really need to know their thermodynamics. They need to know things like that. So does it play a huge role in design automation? Maybe not like a huge role, but obviously it plays a role. You have to know your basics, and then something will come up every once in a while that you do need to maybe do a calculation. But is it every day, constantly? No, I don't think it is.
Would you like to make it more scientific work in the future?
Depends what aspect. I think in automation, it's going to be, I don't see too much room for it. The scientific aspect in automation comes when you're, for example, a vendor and you're designing certain commercial components. Like you're designing a sensor like we're talking about. How does it interact with ambient light? How does, at what temperatures can survive, right? And when you come, you're doing automation, you're going to look at their product and say, okay, this is going in a warehouse where temperature is ranging from, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit open, like 60 degrees Fahrenheit, to somewhere maybe it's a little bit hotter to like 75, 80, you know, depending on what kind of cooling, heating they have. And so you're going to see, okay, this comes within these parameters, I'm good to go. Whereas somebody who designed that, maybe they need to design a machine that's going to a really cold environment, and they need to make sure. So when I like to see it, and as far as my line of work, whatever needs to be done needs to be done. But I'm sort of indifferent. There's, when I say there isn't that in automation, there isn't in what I do, but the components and things like that, I need to know if certain material is going to survive. Again, going back to the materials, is going to survive under certain conditions.
Right.
Corrosion. And
how much is going to last?
Exactly. I just don't see it being a factor unless you're maybe getting into some really high end, but like you talk about aerospace, a branch of mechanical engineering, they have to do a lot of finite analysis and things like that, and they're running a bit different software. Automation, you want to be as economical as possible, but you have hundreds, thousands of screws on a machine. You're not going to do analysis on every one to see if you can maybe go with a bigger or smaller one, or is that maybe you're going to say, all right, if I can use a little bit bigger of a screw, I'm going to use it. I'm going to try to use the same screw, you know, an M6 or a quarter 20 throughout the machine, because that's economical, you know what I mean? But it's not economical that, all right, you put two plates together that you know are going to sit together, and you're going to say, all right, let me take the time to go into Abacus or Hypermesh and see if the screw is going to hold. It's going to hold. You know what I mean?
It's a known thing there. So after all these projects, what would you say? What's your level of expertise? Are you a senior or a design engineer, or how is that going? Junior, mid-level, senior?
I think.
What's the grades?
I think every company with itself. I think junior and senior is way too broad, and there's no gap in between. I'd say maybe somewhere mid-level, but it takes quite some time to get there. And the other thing is, this is a job, and with like a lot of other jobs, that you're constantly learning, especially with technology changing. So I understand the concepts. We both did a lot of hands-on work. We put machines together, we fabricated some things, which has given me an edge that I think a lot of engineers, they go straight into design, and maybe they do some do-it-yourself projects at home, but they haven't done those machines. And I think a lot of people like in Tishma, new engineers that came in, they were sent to the shop, and I think that's a great thing. So when it comes to my level, I don't think I'm quite at the senior level, and maybe I am, but I don't want to give myself, you know, those credentials. But I'm very comfortable with the job, and with what I do, that I don't see issues with what is asked of me for standard line machines, for custom machines. Yeah, I gotta dig, and maybe a senior engineer would do something a little bit quicker than I would. Maybe they can reference a few more vendors and things like that. But yeah, I'm definitely not a beginner. And you get in this job, and we were thrown in the fire, you know, with smaller companies, which is a great thing. We got to work on a lot of things, learn a lot of aspects of the industry. The thing is, you don't realize how much you've learned until you see someone new come in. You know, they could be a 4.0 student who's worked in internship, who's very smart, who has, you know, great, bright future ahead of them. The real world experience, especially in a smaller company, when you're not just stuck doing one aspect of design work, when you're part of a project from concept development to design to ordering parts to working with electrical to working with controls to seeing the parts come in, to seeing the wrong parts come in, whether that's your mistake or that's the mistake of and you know, the company that sent the wrong part, to the first time you see how bad your decision to make the certain geometric tolerances or just regular tolerances, and you see something doesn't fit together. Like, you try to ask, but you don't think, you know, some things make a difference. And you get to see yourself screw up, and for something that has a deadline, for something that someone paid for, and something that someone's expecting to receive, and it works, and there's no questions asked, you know? And so that can't really compare, and I think the amount of experience you get in a year is crazy. 2 years, you know, not talking about 5 years and down the line 10 years, and there's just nothing for an engineer that's come up the same way that I have. There's no way I can match their knowledge of 10 years, you know, work. Maybe there's something they learn from me, but there's definitely more I'm gonna learn from them, and there's something they're gonna learn from somebody who has 20 years of experience, you know what I mean? So, to answer your question, I don't quite think I'm a senior level engineer. Do get those LinkedIn emails for a senior position.
Every week.
Every week, yeah, but you know, but being, you know, at the 5+ year mark, you're looking at being in that sphere. So it's cool to know. On the other hand, it's, you scratch yourself. You're like, I'm starting to get a little bit old here. You know, I'm a senior engineer, but yeah.
Basically, what about the mistakes you made? What's your feeling about it? How do you deal with your inevitable mistakes on projects and engineering work?
So,
and with that, let's say a message to all young engineers that's struggling like we are.
So I think when you start out, you're gonna make mistakes, especially in engineering. You want to try to make those mistakes as small as possible, but if everything is the way it should be, you should have a senior engineer that's checking your work. Somebody, even senior engineers, I always believe, need a second set of eyes. You don't see, you're staring at something for the longest time, you just don't see some mistakes, you don't see some things. So I think just every young engineer should be aware of, enter everything that you do as if you don't know anything, but don't be afraid to ask questions. And it's really good. Some people don't have the opportunity. I was fortunate enough to have really good engineers around me, senior engineers who were willing to spend the time with me to explain how to do things properly, you know, and there's some things that you're gonna do that you're not gonna realize is a mistake. Hopefully, like I said, it's not too costly to where, you know, you mess up a project, but I think a proper manager, proper whoever is your superior, will put you in a position to where you're gonna do the task that you have correctly. They're gonna review your work, and they're not gonna allow, because that's part of their job, who they assign to a certain task. So with that said, don't be afraid to ask questions. And that's not even a senior level engineer who's starting out a different company. You got the job because they believe you're qualified. But don't be afraid to ask, what are your standard formats? How do you do this? How do you do that? You know, are there vendors? Can I see a list of vendors that we use? I've worked with these guys. Maybe you don't work with these guys. There's nothing wrong with that. And the more questions you ask early on, the more you're gonna learn, the less mistakes you're gonna make, and the better of an engineer you're gonna be. And accept your mistakes. You know, don't try to put the blame on someone else. A part comes in and it's wrong. First thing you do, don't say, oh, the vendor screwed it up. Because if you screwed it up, you're gonna look like an idiot because you blamed the vendor and you missed the hole. Go back to your drawing and say, okay, I did this, this, and this. The drawing is correct. Let me, if you have any contact with the vendor, let me contact them and see what the problem is.
Double check.
Double check, and maybe they screwed up. Maybe there's a reason they couldn't make it the way which they should have contacted you. But gather all information first. Start with yourself, right? You designed something, you released it. Go back and check your work. And when you establish, for example, that you screwed up, go and admit your mistake. And say, hey, I messed this up, we need to fix this part. I have a solution, we can fabricate this one, or we need to order a new one, or we can make something, offer a new solution. Don't just say I screwed up, see how you can fix what you did. And if you did do everything correct and it's the vendor, okay, well there you go, you respectfully contact the vendor and say, hey, you guys messed this part up. If it's running late, if you're close to the deadline, tell them, hey, you know what, this isn't our fault, we need this part, this machine, we have an FAT coming out in 2 weeks, this part is crucial, we need this ASAP, no questions asked. And you know what, sometimes they won't work with you, they just can't. And you'll have to wait, but you have to make it work, you have to communicate with people. I think the problem with some engineers is they close up and they just want to be by the computer, which is fine when you start designing, but engineering, there has to be a certain level of communication. At the very least, just to get your design ideas across, your reasoning behind the design, and then things like that. So it's probably my message to not just, especially engineers who are starting out, but any and all engineers. As smart as you are, don't feel like it's an embarrassment or that you're not capable of doing something. It's good to have someone check your work. It's good to have someone approve what you've done, and stand by your work, whether you do it correctly or not. But know how to go from there. Know how to fix your mistakes and deal with them.